My son's fiancée asked me to leave the rehearsal dinner because my dress made her family uncomfortable. She said it softly, as if giving directions instead of removing me from my son's wedding weekend. One hand rested on her stomach, the other pointed toward the service hallway behind the ballroom. I wore a navy wrap dress, low black shoes, and the pearl earrings my husband had given me before he died. Nothing about me was expensive. Nothing was accidental. I looked past her at Caleb. He stood near the bar, shoulders turned toward us, close enough to hear, far enough to pretend he couldn't. Sloane watched his face instead of mine. That was the first question I carried out of the hotel. Why did they need me gone badly enough for my own son to let them do it? "I'm sorry," Sloane said. "The photographs are very curated." I took my coat from the back of my chair. I had paid for that coat, the white roses on every table, transportation for 2 relatives, and the rehearsal dinner itself. No one stopped me as I passed the flowers and entered the service corridor. Outside, Nashville's damp air chilled my bare hands. A red stripe from the hotel's revolving sign crossed my windshield. I sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. Then my phone vibrated. The email came from the title company handling Monday's closing. The subject read, "Final amendment. Signature required by 9 a.m." I opened the attachment. The $120,000 I had promised toward Caleb and Sloane's first home was not described as a simple down payment gift. It was listed as proof of funds connected to Whitaker Holdings LLC, an entity I had never heard of. At the bottom, beneath Caleb's signature, was another signature. Mine. I read it twice, then called the escrow officer. "This is Evelyn Harper," I said. "Place a written hold on my funds. Do not release any portion of the $120,000. After checking the file, she said, "The wire is still in escrow. Please confirm that in writing." 8 minutes later, her reply stated that the funds had not been disbursed and that my instruction had been added to the file. It wasn't dramatic. No one shouted or was arrested. But for the first time that evening, I felt the balance shift beneath my feet. I drove home to Franklin and left the lights off. The kitchen still held the dress bag I had packed that morning and a small box containing Caleb's wedding gift. I didn't open it. Instead, I printed the amendment, set it beside my checkbook, and studied every line as I studied remodeling contracts before allowing a crew into someone's house. The word gift appeared once. Proof of funds appeared 3 times. Under ownership, Whitaker Holdings LLC was identified as a participating entity, while Caleb and Sloane were listed as the intended occupants. That might have been harmless. It might also have meant my money was helping someone else secure an interest in the property. I still didn't call Caleb. I knew what he would say. There had been a misunderstanding. I needed to trust him. The wedding was tomorrow. I had spent years answering those reminders with money, because money ended difficult conversations faster than truth did. At 11:18, I checked my bank account and transfer details. The wire had been sent 2 days earlier to the escrow account, not the Whitakers. That mattered. My money was still protected by the closing process, and I had time to understand what I had supposedly agreed to before anyone could tell me the decision was final. At 11:31, Caleb called. I let it ring. His voicemail came a minute later. "Mum, Sloane's upset. Please don't make tomorrow harder than it has to be. We'll talk after the wedding." I played it once. His voice sounded tired, not surprised. That hurt more than the message. I went upstairs, changed out of the navy dress, and returned with the pearl earrings still in my hand. My husband had bought them at a department store jewelry counter after our first profitable year of remodeling. We hadn't been wealthy. We had simply reached a point where the refrigerator worked, the mortgage was current, and buying something beautiful no longer felt irresponsible. Caleb had been 12 when his father died. He slept on the floor beside my bed for 3 nights because he was afraid I would disappear too. I remembered that boy whenever he asked for help, mistaking the memory for a promise he was still keeping. At 12:04, I forwarded the amendment and escrow confirmation to Marisol Vega, my longtime title attorney. I did not sign this, and I need to know what it does before Monday. She answered at 12:17. Do not contact anyone involved tonight. Save the original email, attachment, and every message about the transfer. I'll review it at 7. I created a computer folder and copied everything into it. Then I screenshotted Caleb's recent requests, including the message calling the gift letter routine and asking me not to worry about the details. I had nearly signed the earlier version without reading the full packet, because I trusted my son to tell me when something mattered. By 1 in the morning, I had found 3 things that didn't fit. Grant Whitaker had asked twice for the exact date my money would arrive. Sloane's wedding coordinator had called me the sponsor during a planning call, then corrected herself and called me Caleb's mother. And Caleb had forwarded documents from 2 different email addresses without explaining why. I slept badly and woke before dawn. At 6:42, another message arrived from Caleb. Please be at the church by 10. Sloane thinks you should sit in the back. Wear something neutral. I stared at the word neutral until it lost its meaning. Then I opened Marisol's reply. She had reviewed the amendment and marked her note urgent. The document is more serious than a defective gift letter, she wrote. The listed LLC may receive an ownership interest in the house after closing. Also, the signature labeled Evelyn Harper does not match the signature in your original escrow authorization. I called her immediately. Can you tell who prepared it? I asked. Not yet, but there's another issue. She sent the file's electronic audit history. Caleb's signature had been uploaded from a different device than the one used for the rest of the closing packet. Marisol called before I could respond. Evelyn, who had access to Caleb's account last night. I looked at the wedding invitation on my counter, then at the unsigned page bearing my name. I don't know, I said. The audit report refreshed. A new entry appeared, time-stamped 6:58 a.m., showing that someone had just tried to replace the held wire instructions. The audit report refreshed. A new entry appeared, time-stamped 6:58 a.m., showing that someone had tried to replace the held wire instructions. I read it twice. The request had not come from the escrow officer. It came through Caleb's client portal, using a password he had once asked me to help reset after losing his phone. Don't click anything, Marisol said. I already opened the report. That's fine. I mean the replacement request. Don't approve, reject, or acknowledge it. Her even tone told me this had moved beyond family disappointment and into something requiring a file number. I recorded the timestamp, downloaded the report, and saved it in 3 places. Caleb called at 7:11. I let it ring out. When he called again, I ignored him. The 3rd time, I answered. Mum, why is the title company saying you're holding up closing? His voice was low and strained. Behind him, I heard music, a thin burst of strings, followed by applause. I'm not holding up closing. I'm refusing to approve changed wire instructions. It's an administrative update. Marisol says it changes the beneficiary. He exhaled sharply. You don't understand the documents. That hurt more than his message about the back row at church. For years I had understood the documents when he needed a lien released, a loan application reviewed, or a payment schedule explained. I had understood the invoices that kept his first apartment out of collections, and the repair estimates he sent with. Can you just look at this? I understand that my money is still pending, I said, and I understand someone tried to redirect it. Today is my wedding day. I know. You're making this about the wedding. No. You made it about the wedding when you asked me to sit in the back and dress neutral. Silence stretched between us. Then he said, Sloane's family is handling everything. Please don't create a scene. I'm sitting in my kitchen. You know what I mean. I did. He wanted my silence more than my presence. After he hung up, I opened the folder containing every document connected to the purchase. I had printed the original loan instructions because Marisol always warned me not to trust a document simply because it arrived electronically. The original gift letter stated that my contribution was a gift to Caleb Harper and Sloane Whitaker for the purchase of their primary residence. It mentioned no LLC, ownership interest, repayment, collateral, or transfer after closing. Something in me settled, not healed but settled. Suspicion was exhausting because it left room for every explanation. The original letter gave me a boundary I could hold. I sent Marisol a scan. This is the document I agreed to, I wrote. Nothing beyond this. She called within 2 minutes. Good, this helps. Is it enough to stop everything? It tells escrow the amendment doesn't reflect your agreement. Whether it was intentional or careless is separate. I wanted to call it fraud and send the word to Caleb, but Marisol reminded me that anger could be accurate and still be premature. She asked for the entire email chain. Searching Caleb's name, I found the first request from 6 weeks earlier. The lender needs a simple gift letter. You'll get a link. Just click through it. The secure portal had shown me 1 page. When I asked for the full package, Caleb said the rest was standard lender language and would populate automatically. 3 days later, they updated the format. Same thing, please approve before Friday. I had approved the original letter through the portal. I had not approved the amendment. A third message came from Sloane. Grant's attorney says the LLC is only being used for administrative convenience. It doesn't affect you or the house. I stopped scrolling. Sloane had never mentioned Grant's attorney, and Whitaker Holdings LLC had appeared nowhere in the documents I received before the amendment. If it affected neither me nor the house, there was no reason to insert it into a lender's verification file. Marisol reviewed the chain while I waited. Outside, a lawnmower started somewhere down the street and faded behind the windows. At 8:03, she said, the title company sent the amendment to the lender. At 8:17, someone uploaded a verification sheet. At 6:58 this morning, the wire instructions were replaced. That's backward. The money was supposed to be verified before the final documents. Exactly. She asked for the original wire confirmation. I found it in my bank portal. The $120,000 had been sent to escrow under the purchase file number, with Caleb and Sloane listed as the buyers. Its status still showed pending release. That was the first practical relief I had felt since the rehearsal dinner. The money had not vanished. It was sitting in a controlled account, waiting for a transaction that had not legally finished. Marisol said she would send formal notice to the title company and ask the lender to suspend review of the disputed documents. Should I go to the church? I asked. She paused. Do you want to? I looked at the navy dress hanging over a chair. The pearls were still in my ears. I hadn't changed because changing would have meant accepting that the clothes were the problem. I don't know. Then don't decide based on what makes them comfortable. At 8:46, Caleb sent another message. If you don't come, Sloan will know you're trying to punish us. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. I had spent the night protecting money promised for his home while he measured my love by whether I appeared at a ceremony after being told where to sit. I replied once. I am not approving any document that changes the agreement. Marisol will communicate with the title company. Then I turned off my phone. Marisol called at 9:02. Her tone had sharpened. The lender's verification sheet has a second attachment, she said. I'm sending it now. The file arrived with the title company's logo at the top. Beneath the listed funds was a line labeled Additional Source of Funds. Next to it, Whitaker Holdings LLC. The amount was the same, $120,000 I had wired. Under status, someone had typed, committed by Evelyn Harper for LLC capitalization prior to closing. I stared until my vision blurred. Marisol, I said. They told the lender my gift was already committed to the LLC. I know. The next line named Grant Whitaker as managing member and Caleb as an authorized representative. Then a notification appeared from the title company. Please confirm within 30 minutes whether you authorize the attached wire replacement and LLC funding designation. Failure to respond may result in cancellation of the closing and notification to the lender. Marisol called before I could touch the screen. Don't answer them alone. If you deny it, they may ask for a sworn statement. I looked again at the name beneath Grant's. Caleb had not merely signed a wedding document. He had been listed as someone empowered to speak for the company receiving my money. And at 9:17, while the church doors were opening for his ceremony, the title company sent one final message. The disputed authorization originated from Caleb Harper's account. The disputed authorization originated from Caleb Harper's account. I read the sentence twice at my kitchen table, still wearing the neutral blouse he'd instructed me to wear. Outside, a lawnmower moved somewhere down the street. Inside, everything felt suspended. The wedding was beginning without me, and my son's account had become the trail leading back to a document carrying my name. Marisol stayed on the phone. Do not call Caleb yet, she said. Forward every message to me. Don't open new attachments unless I tell you to. I'm not going to accuse him. That's not what worries me. I'm worried about giving them time to correct the story before we preserve the original. That was the first moment I understood the difference between suspicion and evidence. Suspicion made my heart race. Evidence required patience. Marisol arranged a secure review with the title company for Monday morning and asked the escrow officer to place an immediate written hold on the file. The officer, Dana, confirmed that my wire had arrived but remained in escrow. It hadn't been released to the seller, lender, or Whitaker Holdings LLC. I let out a breath. That means they can't complete the closing today, I asked. Not without resolving the disputed authorization, Dana said. Given the ownership language, the lender will need to review it too. It wasn't a victory. No one had been arrested, no account had been seized, and my money hadn't been returned. But the transaction had stopped moving without my permission. For the first time since the rehearsal dinner, I felt the floor beneath me belonged to me again. At 10:24, Caleb called. I watched his name disappear from the screen. A minute later, he called again. I answered the third time. "Mum, where are you?" "Home." "You were supposed to be at the church." "You told me to sit in the back and wear something neutral." He exhaled sharply. "That isn't the point. Sloane is upset, and this is already stressful. I received a notice from the title company." A pause. Music and voices carried faintly behind him. "What notice?" "It says someone submitted a wire replacement and an LLC funding designation using my name." "That's just paperwork. Grant's attorney handled the financing." "Then why does it say I authorized it?" "You authorized the money." "I authorized a down payment gift for you and Sloane. You said you would help us buy the house. I did not say I was capitalizing your future father-in-law's company." His voice lowered. "You're making this about the wedding." "No, the wedding is the reason I'm finally reading everything." The silence that followed was more honest than anything he'd said. Then he said he had to go and ended the call. I forwarded the recording to Marisol. She didn't celebrate it or call it a confession. She replied, "Good, keep communicating in writing from now on." By noon, the ceremony was over. I knew because Sloane posted a photograph beneath the church steeple, smiling beside Caleb as white petals fell around them. I saw it through a mutual friend's account, not because I wanted to watch, but because I needed to know whether they had gone through with the day. The caption read, "Our families made this possible." I saved a screenshot and closed the page. The next morning I met Marisol and Dana in a title company conference room. A sealed folder of closing documents sat on the table. Dana explained that the lender had been notified of the disputed signature and that no one could alter the file without creating a new, traceable submission. Marisol slid the amendment toward me. "Tell me exactly what you recognize." I pointed to the first page. "That's the language Caleb emailed me. He said it was a standard gift letter." "And the second page?" "I've never seen it. It gave Whitaker Holdings LLC an ownership interest tied to the $120,000 and described me as a contributing member. I had never agreed to join the company or received an operating agreement." Dana looked uncomfortable. "That page was included in the package submitted through the lender portal." "Who uploaded it?" Marisol asked. "I'm requesting the complete log now." My phone buzzed. "Sloane. Please sign the clean replacement so we can fix this. You don't need to understand every technical detail." I showed Marisol the message. "Do not sign anything today." A second message arrived. "If you loved Caleb, you would not let one misunderstanding ruin our home." The old reflex rose in me, the one that had made me cover Caleb's rent after his layoff and pay the contractor deposit when his first mortgage application failed. Love had always been presented as a test, and money had become the answer they expected. I typed, "Send all documents through Marisol." Sloane answered almost immediately, "You're being vindictive." I placed the phone face down. "That was the right answer," Marisol said. At 1:06, Dana sent formal confirmation to everyone involved: the lender, seller's attorney, Caleb, and Grant. The closing would not proceed until the disputed authorization and LLC ownership language were investigated. The email changed the room. Until then, they could treat me as an emotional mother, creating a family problem. Now the title company had identified a transaction problem in writing. Dana opened the electronic signature records. "The signature on the amendment is not a fresh signature authenticated through your account," she said. "It appears to be a digital image." Copied from where? Marisol enlarged the earlier escrow authorization. The curve of the H, the slight upward mark at the end of my last name, even the uneven space between my initials looked identical. The image was copied from this document, she said. That doesn't prove who did it, but it means the signature wasn't produced through your secure signing session. My hands stayed flat on the table. Can you preserve that? Dana turned to her computer. The uploaded files, access records, timestamps, and version history. I'll restrict further changes pending review. Minutes later, the title company issued a preservation notice. The amendment was marked disputed, the file locked against routine edits, and the lender requested a written statement confirming that I had not signed or authorized it. I signed that statement carefully. Not the document they wanted. The truth. At 2:18, Dana received the upload history. She printed the relevant page and placed it between us. The amendment had been uploaded from an IP address associated with the Whitaker family's event planning office. Marisol looked at me, but neither of us spoke. My phone lit up again. Caleb had sent a text. If you stop this, Sloan and I lose everything. Before I could answer, the message disappeared. He had deleted it, but I had already captured the screenshot. And beneath the upload record, the next line identified the user who had accessed my original signature file. The next line identified the user who had accessed my original signature file. Sloan Whitaker. I read it twice, then set the paper down and asked Marisol to read it herself. Some facts feel less real when they involve your own child. She accessed the file at 11:43 last night, Marisol said. That doesn't prove she created the amendment. It does prove she had access to the signature packet. Caleb's account uploaded it. According to the audit trail, yes. The distinction mattered. Marisol knew I was tempted to turn suspicion into certainty. I wanted someone to tell me who had forged my name, what Caleb knew, and how much had been decided without me. Instead, she gave me facts and left the anger where it belonged. At 8:06, the title company sent formal notice to everyone on the closing file. The disputed amendment was removed from the active documents, the escrow file remained locked, and the lender would not accept the $120,000 as verified funds until the ownership structure and authorization were resolved. That was the first clear consequence. The house could not close Monday morning using my money and a document I had never signed. I felt no triumph. My shoulders lowered for the first time since the rehearsal dinner, as if someone had taken a heavy box from my arms. Then I opened the separate authorization I had given the hotel for final wedding expenses and sent it to Marisol. I want this cancelled, I said. You can cancel future charges, she replied. Not obligations already made under the contract. I understand. I was not trying to punish the florist, caterer, or hotel staff for choices they had not made. I sent the cancellation through the hotel's finance department, copied the event coordinator, and asked them to direct any disputed balance to Caleb and Sloan. At 8:41, the coordinator called. Mrs. Harper, we were told you were the sponsor for the weekend. I was not. A printer ran in the background. I'm sorry, she said. That's how the internal notes identify you. I paid for some items. That is not the same as authorizing every expense. She promised to update the file. I wrote down her name, the time, and every amount she mentioned. By the end of the call, I had a list of $6,840 in pending charges that had not yet been processed. The second reward arrived quietly. No card was charged. No vendor was left uninformed. The money would not disappear simply because people had started calling my generosity a commitment. I still went to the church. Not because Caleb had asked me to sit in the back, or because Sloane had decided I could attend only if I stayed invisible. I went because I had raised my son, had a right to witness the life he was choosing, and refused to let them tell themselves I had caused the rupture. The usher glanced at my dress and then at the seating chart. "Your name is listed near the family section." "Thank you." I took the last seat on the aisle, several rows behind Grant and his wife. The church was cool and dim. The only detail I remember clearly was the pale light on the program in my lap. Caleb never looked back during the ceremony. Sloane looked back 3 times. When the vows ended, everyone stood. I stood too, but I did not clap harder than anyone else, or cry where they could see me. I watched my son promise his future to a woman who had called my presence uncomfortable, and wondered when his need to belong had become stronger than his ability to be honest. Afterward, I drove to the reception alone. Marisol had advised me not to discuss the disputed documents in public. I had no intention of making a speech. I wanted only to stay long enough to hear what people said when they assumed I had accepted my assigned role. The reception room was bright with white flowers and gold place cards. My card sat near the service doors beneath a label that read, "Sponsor Family." I turned it face down. A server approached with a folder. "Mrs. Harper, the event office asked whether you'll be approving the remaining balance tonight." "No. Please give it to the bride and groom." Her expression changed slightly. She tucked the folder against her side and walked away. That was the 3rd reward, smaller than the others but necessary. For once, no one was assuming my silence meant consent. Caleb found me in the hallway just before dinner. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "I came to your wedding. You knew this would make things worse. I did not tell the title company to alter my signature. This isn't the place. Then tell me where the place is." He glanced toward the reception room. "Mum, if you stop the money, Sloane and I lose the house. The closing is already stopped because the paperwork is disputed. You're acting like I did this to you. You signed as an authorized representative for the LLC. I didn't understand what that meant." "You signed it." His eyes dropped. For a moment, the boy who used to bring me broken cabinet hinges and ask whether they could be fixed appeared in his face. Then the music started, and applause swallowed the moment. "I thought it was temporary," he said. "What was temporary?" He glanced toward the ballroom. "Grant said the house would be part of a larger family investment plan. The LLC would hold it until the financing was settled." "Who's financing?" Before he could answer, Grant stepped into the hallway and took Caleb's phone from his hand. Caleb did not resist. Grant faced me with the polished expression he had worn at the rehearsal dinner. "You are interfering with a committed transaction. I am disputing a document bearing my name. You may expose yourself to a lawsuit for disrupting the purchase. Then have your attorney contact Marisol." His jaw moved once. "You think this is about a dress?" "No. I think the dress was a way to keep me away from the paperwork." Grant held Caleb's phone between us. "You should be careful about making accusations you cannot prove." "I have the audit history." For the first time, his expression lost its polish. Caleb whispered, "Mum, please." I looked at him. "Did you know my money was being used to capitalize your father-in-law's LLC?" He did not answer. Grant stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You have until tomorrow morning to reconsider. If the closing fails, there will be consequences for everyone." I left before he could turn the threat into a conversation. At home, I placed the printed audit report beside my laptop and opened the email Marisol had forwarded. The lender had requested one final document before reviewing the file again. It was a copy of the operating agreement for Whitaker Holdings LLC, under distribution of proceeds. My $120,000 was listed as the first payment to be reimbursed. Not to me, but to Grant Whitaker. I read the reimbursement clause 3 times before I let myself believe it. My $120,000 was not being treated as a gift to Caleb and Sloan. It was listed as capital support to Whitaker Holdings LLC, with Grant Whitaker entitled to recover it before anyone else received proceeds from the property. That was when I understood the difference between helping my son buy a home and financing his future father-in-law's balance sheet. I forwarded the operating agreement to Marisol and called her office. She answered on the second ring. "Please tell me you haven't signed anything else." "I haven't." "Good. Don't contact the lender yet. Send me the complete file, not screenshots." I attached everything: the original gift letter, escrow receipt, disputed amendment, and the message Caleb had deleted after I captured it. Then I sat at my kitchen table while the files uploaded, feeling the strange calm that had come over me when I first learned my husband was dying. Fear became easier to manage once it had paperwork attached to it. Marisol called 20 minutes later. "I'm pulling the public filings and certified title records. I can review what's available, but I won't obtain anything improperly or speculate about criminal conduct. I don't want speculation. I want to know what my money was being used for. That's exactly what we'll establish." By noon, she had found the first crack in the Whitaker image. Grant's brokerage had 3 active liens. 2 involved unpaid commercial obligations. The third came from a private loan that had matured 6 weeks earlier. None was large enough to make the business look impossible from the outside, but together they explained why a lender might demand additional collateral. Marisol emailed me the certified records. Their official seals and black file stamps felt more honest than the wedding invitation beside my coffee maker. "His company isn't insolvent," she said, "but it's carrying significant risk." "And the house fixes that?" "Not by itself, but if the house is purchased through the LLC, reliable capital improves its balance sheet. It may also support financing tied to the commercial debt." I looked at the phrase, capital support, on the operating agreement. Does my money count as reliable capital if I never agreed to that? No, not if you never authorized the designation. That gave me something solid to hold on to. Not victory, but a fact that did not depend on Caleb's explanation or Grant's charm. At 1:06, Marisol sent another email. The lender had provided its funding conditions. Whitaker Holdings had to demonstrate a minimum amount of committed capital before Grant's separate financing could proceed. The exact amount was $120,000. The same amount I had wired for Caleb and Sloan's down payment. I read the email beside the sink, water running until I remembered to shut it off. My first reaction wasn't anger, it was embarrassment. For months I had told myself Caleb was nervous about buying his first house. I excused every vague answer because I remembered him at 10, sitting on the garage floor while I replaced a damaged cabinet hinge. He had handed me screws one at a time and asked whether we could build the whole house ourselves. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped asking whether I understood the paperwork and started assuming I would sign whatever kept him comfortable. "Did he know?" I asked when Marisol called again. "I don't know. The records show what the transaction was designed to do, not what Caleb understood. He was listed as an authorized representative. That matters, but we need the original operating agreement and signature pages before drawing conclusions. I opened Caleb's message from that morning. If you stop this, Sloan and I lose everything. He hadn't written. I didn't know. He hadn't asked what the document meant. He treated my refusal as the disaster, not the arrangement that depended on my silence. At 2:30 I called him. He answered with wedding party noise behind him, voices, music, and the restless energy of people pretending to relax. Mum, I can't do this right now. I'm not calling about the wedding. Did you know my money was being counted as capital for Whitaker Holdings? A pause, long enough for me to hear him breathe. Dad handled the financial structure. That wasn't an answer. Did you sign the operating agreement? I signed documents. I don't know which one you mean. You're listed as an authorized representative. I was told it was a formality. Who told you? Another pause. Grant. I wrote that down. My hand was steady. Did you know he would be reimbursed before you and Sloan received anything from the property? Mum, this is complicated. It's written in plain English. His voice hardened. You promised us that money. I promised a down payment gift for your home. I did not promise to fund an LLC or guarantee your father-in-law's loan. You're doing this on purpose. I'm stopping a disputed transaction until the documents are corrected. You're humiliating me on my wedding weekend. That sentence stayed with me after we hung up. He still believed the humiliation came from my refusal to cooperate, not from excluding me while using my name and money. Marisol sent the certified filings at 4:12. Whitaker Holdings LLC had been formed 3 weeks before Caleb and Sloan told me they had found their dream house. Grant was the managing member. A draft operating agreement listed Caleb and Sloan as non-managing members with no authority over major decisions. That draft had not been included in the closing packet. Caleb's initials appeared beside a clause stating that outside family contributions were non-refundable capital support. I printed everything and arranged the pages by date, the LLC formation record, escrow receipt, disputed amendment, and lender condition requiring $120,000 in committed capital. The timeline did not prove Caleb had planned to deceive me from the beginning. It did prove the LLC existed before his request for money, and that my money had been redirected toward a purpose I never approved. At 6:40, Caleb came to my house alone. He stood on the porch in his wedding clothes, clutching his phone as if it could protect him. I opened the door but didn't invite him inside. Please, he said, I need you to release the funds. You need me to authorize something I never authorized. Grant said the documents can be fixed after closing. Then the closing can wait. His face tightened. Sloan's family has already paid for everything. That isn't my responsibility. He looked past me into the kitchen. You're really going to do this to me? I thought of the gift letter, the altered amendment, and his initials beside a clause he claimed not to understand. I'm not doing this to you, I said. I'm refusing to do it for you. His phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, and the color drained from his face. What is it? He turned the phone toward himself, but not before I saw the sender's name, Grant. The message contained one sentence. Tell your mother what she signed, or I will. Grant's message stayed on Caleb's screen while the porch light hummed above us. Tell me what I signed, I said. Caleb swallowed. The LLC operating agreement. You told me you only signed closing documents for the house. I didn't understand what it was. That isn't the same as saying you didn't know. Hours earlier, he had stood beside Sloane beneath a church arch, while I sat in the back row, exactly where she had instructed me to sit. Now, in his wrinkled wedding clothes, he looked less like a groom than a man who had run out of places to hide. When I stepped aside, he entered. I closed the door but left my coat on. Caleb sat at the kitchen table where he had done homework after his father died, where I had signed his college checks and later wired money for the house. That history made it harder to stay angry. It did not make the documents less real. Grant said the LLC was temporary, he said. The lender needed a clean structure because Sloane and I were buying the property together. Why was my money listed as capital for his company? He said it would be reimbursed at closing. To him, Caleb rubbed his face. He told me the house would still belong to Sloane and me. Did you read the distribution clause? I saw it. That answer landed harder than an admission. I opened the operating agreement Marisol had sent and turned the laptop toward him. The highlighted clause stated that the first $120,000 distributed after closing would go to Grant Whitaker as a capital contributor. There was no mention of me, no repayment obligation to me, and no statement that my contribution was a gift to Caleb and Sloane. Caleb stared at the screen. I thought he was holding it for us. You thought the man receiving my money was holding it for you, but you never asked me. I was going to explain after the wedding. That was the plan. He looked away. Sloane said you would panic if you saw everything before closing. For the first time, he had put the truth in the room without wrapping it in excuses. My absence from the paperwork had been deliberate, even if he had convinced himself it was temporary. My phone rang. Marisol's name appeared. I answered on speaker. Evelyn, the lender scheduled a mandatory file review for Monday morning, she said. They want the disputed amendment, the operating agreement, the audit history, and written explanations from everyone named in the documents. Caleb went still. Will closing happen? Not unless the lender clears the file. The title company won't release your wire while the authorization is disputed. Can't we just remove the LLC? Caleb asked. That may be an option, but it requires proper amendments, lender approval, and confirmation that no one misrepresented the source or intended use of the funds. Grant said it was standard. Grant is not the lender. Before ending the call, Marisol reminded me not to sign any release or settlement without legal review. I recorded the time and saved the notes in the folder I had started that morning. Caleb remained seated. You have to send them something, he said. I already did. I sent the truth. His phone rang. Sloane's name flashed across the screen. He answered, and her voice came through sharply enough for me to hear every word. Are you at your mother's? Yes. Put her on. I held out my hand. No. Sloane laughed without humor. Of course. She wants to make a pregnant bride look dishonest the day after her wedding. Her pregnancy had been used to hurry me, soften me, and make every question seem cruel. Stress could harm Sloane. Delays would embarrass her family. A baby deserved a stable home. None of that turned a forged signature into mine. I didn't accuse you of anything, I said. I reported that I didn't sign the amendment. You knew what the money was for. I knew it was a gift toward a house for you and Caleb. You signed the gift letter, naming you and Caleb. I did not sign an LLC capitalization agreement. Silence followed. Then Sloane said, You're trying to punish us because you weren't invited to the reception. No, I'm protecting money that was used without my permission. Caleb closed his eyes. If you cared about your son, she said, lowering her voice, "you would fix this quietly. If you cared about my son, you wouldn't ask him to hide the paperwork." She hung up. Caleb stared at his phone, as if I had broken something. I remembered how often I had mistaken his discomfort for innocence. He avoided difficult conversations so completely that others had learned to speak through him, and I had kept rescuing him from the consequences of that silence. At 7:26, he emailed me. The subject line read, "My understanding of the funds." He wrote that I had told him the $120,000 was intended only as a personal gift to help him and Sloan buy a home. Grant, he said, had instructed him to sign the operating agreement and represented that my money would remain connected to the house rather than become a contribution to Whitaker Holdings LLC. He also forwarded the complete email chain. Grant repeatedly told Caleb to keep me focused on the wedding and not show me the full documents until after closing. One sentence stood out. My mother did not agree to capitalize the LLC, and she was not shown the complete documents before the wire was sent. I read it twice, forwarded it to Marisol, and saved 3 copies. "That's what you needed, right?" Caleb asked. "It helps establish what you understood. It doesn't erase your signature." "I know." The words were small, but they were the first honest ones he had offered without being cornered. He stood and headed for the door. Before leaving, he turned. "Mum, I'm sorry. I wanted to believe the apology could restore something. Instead, grief settled where hope had been." "I believe you're sorry," I said. "I don't know whether you're willing to tell the whole truth when it costs you something." He nodded, waiting for a promise. I gave him none. The next morning, Marisol called before sunrise. Grant had sent a new email to both of us and copied the lender. He offered a settlement. I would sign a release surrendering all claims to the funds, the LLC, and the property. In exchange, Caleb and Sloan would receive $40,000 after closing. The rest, he claimed, would be retained for documented transaction expenses. Attached was a revised agreement. Beneath Grant's signature was a paragraph stating that I had knowingly funded Whitaker Holdings LLC. Marisol read it aloud, then paused. "Evelyn, this is not a correction." "No," I said, looking at the blank signature line. "It's an attempt to make you confirm their version after the fact." I closed the file. "Then let the lender see it." "They will." At 8:03, the lender confirmed Monday's review and warned that the file could be referred for investigation if the disputed documents were not explained. Below that warning was one final instruction. All parties named in the transaction must attend. Caleb had already told me he would go. I didn't know whether he planned to defend me or save himself. I only knew that on Monday morning, Grant would have to explain why my name appeared on a document I never signed, and why his settlement offer depended on me lying about it. By 8:47 Monday morning, I was sitting beside Marisol in a small conference room at the title company. The disputed amendment, original gift letter, screenshots, upload logs, and Caleb's written admission were spread across the table. The room smelled faintly of coffee and printer paper. I kept looking at the empty chair across from me, wondering whether Caleb would sit there as my son or as Grant Whitaker's authorized representative. Marisol touched the top page. "You don't have to prove their intent today. You only have to state what you signed, what you didn't sign, and what you authorized." That distinction steadied me. For 2 days, everyone had tried to pull me into explanations about family pressure, wedding expenses, verbal promises, and rush deadlines. Marisol had reduced the entire mess to 3 questions. For the first time since Saturday night, I felt a solid floor beneath me. The closing attorney, Dana Reeves, entered with a lender representative and a folder marked Whitaker Holdings LLC, Source of Funds Review. Grant came in behind them wearing a grey suit and the expression of a man who believed paperwork was something other people feared. Caleb followed, pale and silent. Sloane remained in the hallway with her arms folded. Dana closed the door. This is not a closing, it is a document review. Grant smiled without warmth. We understand. No, Dana said. You understand that the transaction cannot proceed while the source of funds and ownership documents are disputed. His smile vanished. Dana began with the original gift letter I had signed months earlier. It identified the $120,000 as a down payment contribution for Caleb and Sloane's primary residence. It said nothing about an LLC, a capital investment, an ownership interest, or reimbursement to Grant Whitaker. That is the only authorization I signed, I said. Dana placed the disputed amendment beside it. The signature looked close enough to fool someone glancing quickly, but the spacing was wrong. The capital H in Harper was too narrow, and the final stroke ended sharply instead of trailing beneath the name. I had signed my name on construction contracts for 25 years. I knew my own hand. Grant leaned forward. She reviewed several versions electronically. The document may have been signed through an alternate device. Marisol answered before I could. The audit history shows no authenticated signing session by Evelyn Harper. The file was uploaded from the Whitaker event office, then accessed through Caleb Harper's account. Caleb flinched. The lender representative turned toward him. Did you upload or authorize the upload of this amendment? Caleb looked at Grant. That was the first answer. I received documents, he said. I didn't understand every provision. That is not what I asked. I may have forwarded them. To whom? I don't remember. Marisol slid a screenshot across the table. The system records your login at 6:58 Sunday morning. It also records a message from your account requesting that the wire instructions be replaced with LLC capitalization instructions. Caleb stared at the page, his hands beginning to shake. She placed his written admission beside it. You also wrote that Grant told you the capital support clause was temporary. His face tightened. I had spent years believing that if I gave Caleb enough time, he would eventually tell the truth. Sitting there, I understood that time had never been the missing ingredient. Consequences were. Trant tapped the table. This is being exaggerated. The LLC was only a temporary structure. The property would still have belonged to Caleb and Sloane. Then why was my money listed as a capital contribution? I asked. It was a technical classification. And why was I listed as the contributor to an entity I had never heard of? He looked at me. Because you agreed to help the family. The old reflex rose. The need to soften my words, protect Caleb from embarrassment, and make the room comfortable again. I let it pass. I agreed to help my son buy a home, I said. I did not agree to finance your company. The lender representative opened another folder. There is also an issue with the operating agreement. Dana handed him the document. Under the distribution clause, the first reimbursement from the property proceeds goes to Grant Whitaker in the amount of $120,000. Grant's chair scraped the floor. That was an internal accounting provision, he said. It names the exact amount of Evelyn's contribution, the lender representative replied. It also gives Whitaker Holdings control over proceeds if the property is sold or refinanced. Sloane entered the room, her voice tight. Why are we discussing this in front of her? I looked at her. Because my name is on it. She stopped. Dana gathered the pages into a neat stack. Based on the disputed signature, inconsistent source of funds designation, and ownership provision, the lender will not approve this file as submitted. Grant stood. You cannot cancel a transaction over a family disagreement. This is not a family disagreement, Dana said. It is a documentation problem involving suspected signature misuse. The air changed. No one shouted or threatened to call the police. Dana simply explained that the title company would preserve the electronic records and refer the suspected misuse to the appropriate authorities. The lender would reject the altered documentation, the purchase would be cancelled rather than transferred into the LLC, and escrow would return my untouched $120,000 after the required verification process. I signed the release instructions confirming where the money should be returned. My hand was steady. In the hallway, Sloane cried quietly near the reception desk. Caleb stood beside her, but did not touch her. Grant was on the phone, speaking in a low, furious voice about deadlines and reputational damage. Marisol placed the copies in my bag. You did exactly what you needed to do. The reward in that sentence was not triumph, it was permission to stop explaining myself. Outside, the morning air was cool, and the parking lot was nearly empty. I had just reached my truck when Caleb hurried after me. Mum! I kept walking until he said my name again. He stopped several feet away. His wedding clothes were wrinkled, and the confidence he had borrowed from the Whitakers was gone. I ended the financing arrangement with Grant, he said. I turned. What does that mean? It means I'm not going through with the house, or the LLC. I told him I won't sign anything else. I waited. He swallowed. I should have told you sooner. I knew the money wasn't being treated like a gift anymore. I knew Grant wanted control of the property. The confession hurt more than his excuses, not because it surprised me, but because it confirmed he had understood enough to choose silence. You let me believe you were buying a home, I said. I was afraid. You were afraid of losing Sloane. He glanced toward the building. I was afraid of losing everyone. For a moment, I saw the boy who had sat beside me at the kitchen table after his father died, pretending not to cry. Then I saw the man who had watched my name be attached to a transaction and waited to see whether I would notice. I'm not your emergency exit anymore, I told him. He nodded, but he didn't leave. There's something else, he said. My stomach tightened. Sloane still has another document with your name on it. Grant told her to keep it in case the lender asked questions. What kind of document? Caleb pulled out his phone. It may authorize repayment from Harper Renovations. He turned the screen toward me. At the bottom of the page, beneath my company's name, was a signature that looked exactly like mine. The signature looked like mine because it had been copied from a company check I'd signed years earlier. I took the phone from Caleb and enlarged the image. The page was titled Reimbursement Authorization. It claimed Harper Renovations owed Whitaker Holdings LLC $38,460 for pre-closing consulting and project coordination. The description was vague, the date was wrong, and the signature sat beneath a company seal I had never used. Where did you get this? Sloane sent it to me. Who created it? He glanced toward the dark street. I don't know. That answer had become his shelter whenever the truth came close. I forwarded the image to Marisol. Her reply came within minutes. Do not open, edit, or send it to anyone except me. Bring the original device if you have it. Caleb read over my shoulder. "Can I come with you? You can go home. Mum." I looked at the suit he'd worn for a ceremony I hadn't attended. His tie was loose, and a pale line marked where his wedding ring had been removed and replaced several times. "You chose their version of me," I said. "Now you need to sit with what that choice cost." He flinched but didn't argue. It was the first honest reaction I'd seen from him all weekend. By 8 the next morning, I was at Marisol's office with my laptop, the text screenshots, and the printed escrow records. She had asked Dana Brooks, my company accountant, to join us by video. Dana pulled up the authorization and compared it with Harper Renovations records. "The invoice numbers don't exist," she said. "Neither does the project code. Could money have been moved without me seeing it?" "No," she turned toward another screen. "Harper has dual approval for transfers above $5,000. Your approval is required, and mine is required for the accounting release." My shoulders loosened for the first time since the rehearsal dinner. No company funds had been taken. The document was false, but the damage was real. Someone had used my name, my business, and the trust attached to both as if they were available for borrowing. Marisol asked Caleb to send the original file instead of another screenshot. He did it from the end of the conference table, elbows pressed to his knees. The metadata showed the document had been created 3 days earlier, revised twice, and exported from a computer registered to the Whitaker event office. The final user account belonged to Sloan. Caleb closed his eyes. "I didn't know she made that. You knew enough to forward company invoices to Grant." He opened his mouth, then stopped. The silence was more useful than another explanation. Marisol printed the metadata beside the disputed escrow amendment. The files had been created on different computers, but both had been accessed through the same shared office network. It didn't prove Sloan had forged my signature herself. It did establish a chain no one could dismiss as a clerical mistake. At noon, I changed every business password, revoked Caleb's vendor portal access, and notified the bank that no reimbursement or consulting payment to Whitaker Holdings LLC was authorized. Dana added a note requiring my written confirmation before any new vendor connected to the Whitakers could be created. They were ordinary precautions. They felt like locking every door after realizing someone had been walking through the house at night. Caleb waited in the lobby while I worked. When I came out, he stood. "I'll sign whatever statement you need. You'll read it first." "I will. And you'll tell the truth even if it makes you look worse." He nodded. "I will." Marisol prepared a statement identifying the documents Caleb had received, the dates he forwarded them, and what he remembered about his conversations with Grant. It didn't accuse him of forging anything. It recorded only what he had personally seen and done. He read every page twice, then signed. His hand shook on the final line, but he didn't ask me to soften the wording. He acknowledged forwarding Harper Renovations invoices to Grant, understanding that the $120,000 was being described as LLC capital instead of a personal gift, and failing to tell me when he learned the house would not be controlled solely by him and Sloan. The statement gave me something revenge never could. It gave me a record of his responsibility. By late afternoon, the lender had received the statement, the metadata, and Dana's confirmation that no company funds had been paid. The closing remained suspended, and the title company warned everyone not to alter or destroy related files. I expected relief. Instead, I felt tired enough to cry. Marisol slid a paper cup of water across the table. "You don't have to decide what Caleb means to you today. I'm afraid if I stop being angry, I'll start excusing him. Anger isn't the only thing that can hold a boundary. I wrote that down later because I knew I'd forget it. That evening, Caleb came to my office with a folder. He placed it on my desk without sitting. "What's this?" "A list of the wedding charges I personally authorized." The total was $14,780. The photographer, a transportation deposit, and 2 vendor balances he'd put on cards in his own name. He'd also included a repayment schedule based on his salary, with no request for help and no promise he couldn't keep. "I'll pay these," he said. "Not Sloane's family's expenses, mine." I studied the page. It was the first practical thing he'd offered, instead of an apology. "You may not be able to keep every payment. Then I'll call the vendors before I miss them." I nodded. "That's what repair looks like." His eyes reddened. "Is there any way to repair us?" I wanted to answer quickly, to tell him that one statement and a few bills couldn't rebuild years of trust. But a final sentence would have been another form of control, and I was done controlling what he had to become. "I don't know," I said. "You'll have to show me." He accepted that without asking for a hug. After he left, I stood alone and looked at the old company photograph above my desk. My husband was smiling beside a half-finished kitchen we'd remodeled together. Caleb was 8, holding a paintbrush far too large for his hand. For years, I'd believed the money was the strongest thing I could give my son. It wasn't. The strongest thing was refusing to help him lie. At 9:12 the next morning, Marisol emailed me a listing for a small property outside Franklin. It had a workshop, a modest house, and an unfinished back room I could turn into an office or a classroom for young tradespeople. The price was within my means. The seller wanted an answer by morning. A minute later, another message arrived from Caleb. "Can I come by alone before you decide?" Caleb arrived 20 minutes later, alone and without the wedding jacket he had worn the day before. He stood on my porch with both hands visible, as if he understood that trust had become something I had to inspect before accepting. "I'm not here to ask for money," he said. That was the first thing he had said in months that I believed without effort. I stepped aside. He entered the kitchen and sat where he had eaten birthday cake as a child, looking at the folder containing the title company's notices. "Grant told me the house would be ours after closing," he said. "He said the LLC was temporary, just to satisfy the lender and protect Sloane's family investment. Did you read the operating agreement?" "Yes." "Did you understand that my $120,000 would be reimbursed to him first?" Caleb lowered his eyes. I understood enough. The honesty hurt more than his old excuses. He told me Sloane had known about the LLC from the beginning. She had called the arrangement normal and said I would be grateful once I saw the finished house. Grant had called my contribution a family gift, but the documents used shifting language, capitalization, proof of funds, reimbursement, and authorized distribution. Caleb had signed where he was told, then stopped opening my questions. "I kept thinking I could fix it after the wedding," he said. "If I made everyone happy for one weekend, the pressure would go away. It never goes away when you pay for it with someone else's trust." He nodded. "I wanted the Whitakers' approval more than I wanted to protect you." I had needed him to say that, though hearing it changed nothing. He placed his phone on the table. "There's more. Sloane used your company information on another application. I didn't know until Grant texted me. The document claimed Harper Renovations had agreed to guarantee construction expenses tied to the property. The signature resembled mine, but the company address was one I had abandoned 3 years earlier. I photographed the screen and sent it to Marisol. She replied within minutes. "Don't confront Sloane or Grant. Don't sign anything. Preserve every message. Will you give a statement? I asked. He swallowed. Yes. Not because you want the house. I know. Not because you want forgiveness. I know that too. That was the first reward I allowed myself. Not an apology, but a choice he made without asking me to rescue him from its consequences. I still love you, I said. But love does not mean you get access to my accounts, my company, or my peace. His face tightened. I understand. You may have to prove that for a long time. I will. The lender's review took most of Monday afternoon. Marisol joined by phone while I sat in a title company conference room with the disputed amendment, audit history, and screenshots arranged chronologically. Grant appeared by video from another office. Sloane sat beside him wearing the same polished expression she had worn at the rehearsal dinner, though her mouth tightened whenever a document appeared. The closing attorney asked simple questions. Did you sign this amendment? No. Did you authorize Caleb to sign for Whitaker Holdings LLC? No. Did you agree that your money would be reimbursed to Grant Whitaker before any ownership interest transferred? No. Each answer felt smaller than the damage behind it, but small answers were enough when records supported them. Then Caleb spoke. I signed the LAC authorization, he said. I was told it was part of the purchase paperwork. I did not have permission to commit my mother's money to the company, and I should have asked her before signing. Grant interrupted. That is not an accurate characterization. The attorney raised a hand. You'll have an opportunity to respond. Grant never gave a clear response. He talked about custom, urgency, and misunderstandings. When asked where I had agreed to the arrangement, he referred to the unsigned amendment. By the end of the meeting, the lender had suspended approval, and the title company confirmed that my wire would remain in escrow until the dispute was resolved. The buyers had only a short period to cure the problems, but they could not do so with money they had never possessed. The wedding had taken place. The marriage lasted less than a week. Sloane returned to her parents' home. Caleb cancelled the purchase and hired his own attorney to separate himself from the LLC. Grant's brokerage was later investigated over unrelated disclosures, and I learned his polished office had been operating under a stack of overdue obligations. I did not follow the case closely. I had spent enough years making other people's emergencies the center of my life. When the escrow funds were released, I divided them before touching a dollar. 10% went into an emergency account. Another portion covered legal fees, taxes, and a review of every company document carrying my name. The rest became a down payment on the small property Marisol had sent me. It sat outside Franklin on a quiet road, with a modest house in front and a detached workshop behind it. The workshop needed electrical work and a new roof, but the foundation was sound. I understood that kind of promise better than promises made at wedding tables. At closing, the attorney slid the deed across the table. Please review the grantee information. I read it twice. Evelyn Harper. No LLC, no second owner, no family member waiting to be added later. I signed in my own name. That afternoon, I ordered a plain metal sign for the workshop. Harper Renovations and Trade Apprenticeship Room. I set aside enough money to help one young person each year buy tools, pay certification fees, or complete required safety courses. My first recipient was Jordan, a 19-year-old apprentice who worked part-time and borrowed tools from 3 different crews. When I handed over the check, Jordan stared at it. Why me? Because someone should make it easier for you to build something honest. The reward was not the gratitude. It was seeing the tools lined up on the workshop bench the following week, each one labeled and cared for. Caleb did not ask for money again. He called once a week, sometimes to tell me about work, sometimes to admit he had handled another conversation badly. He sent copies of the documents his attorney filed and never complained when I said I needed more time. Love remained, but it no longer came with unrestricted access. On my first evening in the new house, I unpacked the pearl earrings from their small box. I had worn them to the rehearsal dinner because they were the last gift my husband had given me before he died, and because I had wanted to feel connected to the life I thought I was entering. Beneath them lay a folded piece of paper. I recognized Caleb's handwriting before opening it. I finally understand what I made you prove. I read the sentence once, then placed it beside the deed. I did not call him. I turned on the workshop lights, stepped into the room under my own name, and began again. Then my phone rang. The caller ID showed Grant Whitaker. I answered without speaking. His voice came through low and controlled. "Evelyn, before you use that deed, you need to know who actually owns the land.